President Trump issued a declaration of emergency in Washington, D.C. that extends past inauguration, but it's not the Insurrection Act. How are they different? Many world leaders are condemning big tech censorship of President Trump, and many of these are critical of Trump. So why are they condemning censorship now? And some states are taking matters into their own hands against big tech. Tune in to Deep Dive to find out more. Hello and welcome. This is Deep Dive and I'm Tiffany Meier. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo delivered remarks at the National Press Club early Tuesday morning. He said, "You simply can't put America first if you don't put Americans first." Pompeo confirmed that al-Qaeda's number 2 had been killed. He also accused Iran of giving the terror group a new home base. Biden has said his administration will resume nuclear talks with Iran, which Pompeo disagrees with. He said, "Let's not lie to the American people about Iranian moderation and pretend the appeasement will work." While neither the Obama or Trump administration viewed Iran as a hurdle in negotiations with Tehran, Pompeo says Iran's dealings with al-Qaeda have grown substantially since 2015, saying they have new tools for terror. Pompeo's speech touched on foreign policy, while his speech yesterday called censorship in the U.S. a step closer to tyranny. At a speech at Voice of America Monday, Pompeo condemned the actions of big tech.
Censorship, wokeness, political correctness, it all points in one direction: authoritarianism cloaked as moral righteousness. It's similar to what we're seeing at Twitter and Facebook and Apple and on too many university campuses today. It's not who we are. It's not who we are as Americans.
Pompeo referred to Twitter banning President Trump's account, saying it's un-American and parallels censorship under the Chinese Communist Party. Pompeo condemned the CCP's rhetoric about George Floyd's death, which he said they used to advance their agenda.
When the Chinese Communist Party attempted to exploit the tragic death of George Floyd to claim their authoritarian system was somehow superior to ours, I issued a statement which read in part, quote, "During the best of times, the People's Republic of China ruthlessly imposes communism. But amid the most difficult challenge, the United States secures freedom. There is no moral equivalence."
Many world leaders view the censorship by tech platforms an affront against freedom of speech. German Chancellor Angela Merkel called Twitter's ban problematic, describing freedom of opinion as an essential right. Merkel's spokesperson said this fundamental right can be intervened in, but according to the law and within the framework defined by legislators, not according to a decision by the management of social media platforms. Members of the French government agreed. The junior minister for European Union Affairs said he was shocked a private company made this kind of decision, something he said should be decided by citizens, not a CEO. Norway's left-wing Labour Party leader added that big tech censorship threatens political freedom around the world. While acting Prime Minister Michael McCormack said he's not one who believes in that sort of censorship. Mexican President Manuel Lopez Obrador and Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny also echoed the message. And Representative Ted Budd has also announced that he will reintroduce a bill to stop big tech censorship. Why are Western countries criticizing big tech censorship after condemning President Trump? Firstly, Western countries claim to be democratic and free, unlike authoritarian countries like the Chinese Communist Party. Secondly, the expansion of the power of big tech platforms is a great threat to the power of government. And on the topic of Twitter, company shares fell up to 12% after banning President Trump from its platform. The price went as low as $45 on Monday. Twitter says it removed the president from its platform after claiming his tweets incited violence. But Trump accuses Twitter of colluding with Democrats and the radical left to ban him, and the 75 million U.S. citizens who voted for him. Despite a rebound later on, eventually Twitter closed down with a tumble of 6.4%. Twitter spearheaded the tech platforms blocking Trump and his supporters. It's fast becoming synonymous with stifling freedom of speech in the United States. Many attributed Twitter's growth to President Trump, as it's his main means of communicating with his millions of voters since 2016. That resulted in a surge of Twitter users. But now many are leaving the platform after Trump was permanently banned last Friday. Some people believe that Twitter's political correctness will increase its advertising avenue. A North Idaho internet provider blocked access to Twitter and Facebook at its customers' requests. According to emails sent to customers over the weekend, Your T1 Wi-Fi, which provides services in the Spokane and northern Idaho areas, said it received phone calls from customers after those websites moved to block certain types of content and suspended accounts associated with President Trump. One email read, "It has come to our attention that Twitter and Facebook are engaged in censorship of our customers and information." The company also said that it doesn't agree with Facebook, Twitter, Google, and other tech companies engaging in censorship. Our company does not believe a website or social networking site has the authority to censor what you see and post and hide information from you, stop you from seeing what your friends and family are posting. They added, "We also don't condone what Google, Amazon, Twitter, Facebook, and Apple are doing to Parler by trying to strong-arm them into submission." A representative with Idaho State Attorney General's office said it doesn't have the jurisdiction to enforce any laws, including net neutrality laws. And the American Civil Liberties Union, or ACLU, warned of unchecked power being wielded on behalf of tech companies after Facebook and Twitter suspended Trump. And a Florida representative, Randy Fine, is calling on the state to look into big tech, particularly any investments the state might have made with major tech platforms, such as Amazon, Twitter, Apple, Google, and Facebook. He says these platforms are unfairly targeting President Trump and his supporters. In his letter, Fine says they may get to decide who they do business with, so do we. Adding, no matter what one thinks about President Trump, he remains the duly elected president of the United States until noon on January 20th. If the president of the United States can be silenced by these companies, then so can anyone. Fine went on to say it is clear that Twitter and Facebook are engaged in one-sided viewpoint discrimination targeting conservatives. Many have pointed out that world leaders from Iran and China remain active on Twitter, despite many of their statements being violent or controversial. Fine added these companies allow actual terrorists around the world to use their platforms to target America, Americans, and our allies without as much as a peep. And it is not disputed that Amazon, Apple, and Google are actively working to eliminate any alternative outlets where conservatives can speak freely. It's not the first time Fine has raised issues with big tech. He noted a similar issue in 2019 with Airbnb, saying the company chose to target certain Jewish Floridians. Fine went on to say, "I am deeply disturbed to see the country's major technology companies use the actions of these few as a pretext to silence tens of millions of good, patriotic Americans, millions of whom live here in Florida." Adding, Florida taxpayers should not be forced to do business with entities that censor them. And some updates: security preparations are underway in the nation's capital. President Trump has ordered up to 15,000 National Guard troops to be in the city by Inauguration Day. President Trump approved an emergency declaration for the District of Columbia to ramp up security for inauguration. He ordered federal assistance to help the district's response efforts for 14 days with immediate effect. Washington Mayor Muriel Bowser made the request. Bowser's letter said the original plans and resources are now insufficient. She wrote, "We must prepare for large groups of trained and armed extremists to come to Washington, D.C. Bowser asked to extend National Guard support through January 24th. The National Guard confirmed its increasing troop numbers around Washington, D.C. The general said he's received requests from the Secret Service, Capitol Police, and Park Police for guardsmen to be deployed in the city. Acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf said the Department of Homeland Security will bring forward operations for the inauguration to this Wednesday. The D.C. mayor has asked that public gathering permits be canceled and she urged Americans to avoid the city during this time. The traditionally huge ceremony has been scaled back significantly this year due to the pandemic. The committee says Washington's National Mall will be covered with almost 200,000 flags of different sizes to represent the missing crowds. Now, many people think the emergency declaration is the same as the Insurrection Act. It's not. So how are they different? Let's take a look at the text for the emergency declaration. It says, President Trump declared that an emergency exists in the District of Columbia and ordered federal assistance to supplement the district's response efforts due to the emergency conditions resulting from the 59th presidential inauguration from January 11th to January 24th, 2021. The president's action authorizes the Department of Homeland Security, Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, to coordinate all disaster relief efforts which have the purpose of alleviating the hardship and suffering caused by the emergency on the local population, and to provide appropriate assistance for required emergency measures. Authorized under Title V of the Stafford Act, to save lives and to protect property and public health and safety, and to lessen or avert the threat of a catastrophe in the District of Columbia specifically. FEMA is authorized to identify, mobilize, and provide at its discretion equipment and resources necessary to alleviate the impacts of the emergency. Emergency protective measures limited to direct federal assistance will be provided at 100% federal funding. In other words, the emergency declaration deploys the military for security purposes. It also includes mobilizing the DHS and FEMA for relief efforts if needed. The Insurrection Act, meanwhile, has broader implications. The act would allow the president to use the military and National Guard troops within the United States. The original text from 1807 reads, quote, "An act authorizing the employment of the land and naval forces of the United States in cases of insurrections, be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, that in all cases of insurrection or obstruction to the laws, either of the United States or of any individual state or territory, where it is lawful for the President of the United States to call forth the militia for the purpose of suppressing such insurrection, or of causing the laws to be duly executed, it shall be lawful for him to employ for the same purposes such part of the land or naval force of the United States as shall be judged necessary, having first observed all the prerequisites of the law in that respect." And now, to invoke it, certain steps need to be taken first. According to a 2006 report by the Congressional Research Service, the president, quote, "must first issue a proclamation ordering the insurgents to disperse within a limited time. If the situation does not resolve itself, the president may issue an executive order to send in troops before invoking the act." Some have pointed out that these steps have occurred. As protesters moved their demonstrations to the U.S. Capitol last Wednesday, President Trump had been posting on Twitter throughout the afternoon, urging his supporters to remain peaceful. He also released a video, which has since been taken down by Twitter, that called on his supporters to go home now. And White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany also said in a statement on Wednesday that the president authorized the National Guard to assist with the situation at the Capitol. But what do you think? Let me know below. Thanks for tuning in to Deep Dive. I'm Tiffany Meier, and see you soon.